So I became, very honestly, an environmentalist at an early age because I saw what we were both doing on one hand and what was possible. And I've always believed that humanity has within it the abilities to spread incredible positive change, that we are not inherently destructive, right? That we can create places of beauty. And I had been working for many years on this idea of living buildings, that we needed to think not about how we can be less bad, but how we can try to figure out what good looks like. What does it mean to regenerate? What does it mean to live truly as part of the natural world? And so this idea of trying to define a truly restorative project and trying to, for example, one way you might look at it is instead of buildings that are less likely to give you cancer, how about buildings that can't give you cancer? Isn't that better? Instead of buildings that produce less carbon pollution and contribute less to climate change, how about buildings that produce no pollution and don't contribute to climate change, et cetera, and go down a list of issues that you care about. And for a species that is as smart and multi-talented as ours, we really set our sights and our bar so low when it comes to building our own communities. And we have these expectations in other realms that's so much greater. And there's been comparatively a lack of innovation in the way we think about building and community. But the whole point of the Living Building Challenge was really to shine a light on a host of issues that we have to fix, right? And as it turns out, and sometimes people find this surprising who don't know me very well, is I don't really care about rating systems and certification and those kinds of things. What I care about is the results that we have. And it turns out that sometimes it's very helpful to have tools and systems to get us to think a certain way. But the challenge is really not meant to just be a certification program like LEED. It was always designed to change the way you think and to get you to start to question the wider connections between things. And when you do, it's hard to go back. It's hard to go back to the old way of doing things. It's really exciting to see how design teams begin to think about how they solve problems differently for different climates, right? When you're in a desert, you have to think like a cactus, right? When you're in a more wet place, maybe you think like a rhododendron. And this idea of really responding to climate and culture and place becomes, again, part of what's important with the philosophy. You can't just plop down the same response in different communities and expect to do a living building. It means that you have to think very carefully about where you're building and why. And if you do this, you achieve a remarkable result. When we build these models and we show people the vision of what's possible, it does something to people. It changes what they think they're capable of. Personally, when I think of cities that I want to live in and the lens through which I view, I try to think of what children need. And the idea that we need to create a new planning paradigm that is based not, of course, on the automobile, which is the way we've planned our cities for so long, these giant machines that change the spatial dynamics of every community, but instead, how do we look through the lens of the most vulnerable and precious of our citizens and say, what do they need in community? And if we did that, if we forced ourselves to think in a different scale, right, in a different level of vulnerability, how would we design our communities? The beautiful thing is everywhere I go around the world, I meet the most amazing people doing the most amazing work and regenerating their communities and talking about issues that just a few years ago was not safe perhaps to talk about. And I think honestly that we have it within us to create rapid positive change.